Kristen. Thank you, choir. I invite you to continue with me in prayer with the words of J. Philip Newell. Let us pray. Clear our heart, O God, that we may see you. Clear our heart, O God, that we may truly see ourselves. Clear our heart, O God, that we may know the sacredness of this moment. And at every moment, we seek you, we serve you, and strengthen you as the living presence. Clear our heart, O God, that we may see. Amen. Well, of the masses of all genders and ages participating in women's marches around the world yesterday, there were also thousands of creative signs, many of which I will not reread for you here. From the light-hearted, we shall overcome. Yes, we shall overcome. To the heartbreaking, pre-existing condition, breast cancer. People of all backgrounds were freely expressing themselves. Of the signs that I personally encountered, one especially resonated with me. Love, not hate, will make America great. Love, not hate, will make America great. As I said in the welcome, please know that whether you are visiting here for the first time or have been attending for many decades, that this church consists of people of virtually every viewpoint. My hope for today is that every single one of us leaves prepared to look in the mirror of Christ's love and be prepared to reflect his light and will in the world. I do believe that selfless love, not hate, will make America great. But the validity of this statement depends upon our understanding of what love is. Today we continue our sermon series on love is not, seeking to take a fresh look at the 1 Corinthians passage Kristen so eloquently read for us. I have reviewed this passage, as many of you have, so many times at weddings and sometimes memorial services that it can be very easy to tune out, for the words to fall flat. Our focus today will be on a single verse, 1 Corinthians 13:3. I'll share a couple of different versions, but I invite you to open your pew Bibles or your mobile device if you prefer. The pew Bibles you may open to page 934, or if you're looking on your mobile device, just enter 1 Corinthians 13:3. We'll first look at the New Revised Standard Version, your pew Bible. Let us read verse 3 aloud together. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. The New Living Translation puts it this way: if I gave everything I have to the poor and even sacrificed my body, I could boast about it, but if I didn't love others, I would have gained nothing. And the King James Version, which I know at least some here today were forced to memorize as a child, says in its very eloquent way, and though I bestow my goods and feed the poor, and even sacrificed my body, oh, pardon me, that is not it. Especially if you memorize it, you know. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing. I know many of you have those words ringing in your ears as you have heard them from your childhood. But of the many times I have preached from this passage at weddings and other places, I realize that I have glossed over the third verse, really have never discussed it at all. You see, demonstrating patience and kindness and hoping in all things, bearing in all things, is much warmer and fuzzier to discuss in mixed company. The third verse has teeth. It is strong. It even supports the Beatles lyrics from the happy song the choir just sang. See, I believe that Paul, the apostle, not McCartney, has probably had many eons of good laughs that this love passage became so popular when it was in fact one of the most challenging in the entire Bible. And just I'll tell you my take, Paul is probably not someone I would have invited to a wedding because I don't really think he was probably very fun. As for Sir Paul McCartney, he did not set out to write a bubblegum pop song. In his words, "Can't Buy Me Love" is my attempt to write a bluesy mode. The idea behind it was that all these material possessions are all very well, but they will not buy me what I really want. But the Beatles' invasion was in full swing, and the version familiar to many of us became the hit. Popular culture tends to trivialize and monetize love. As many preachers before me have pointed out, part of the problem is the inadequacy of the English word love to capture the meaning of the Greek word in the 1 Corinthians passage, agape. Agape. Consider how we tend to throw around the word love. At least speaking for myself, it would not be out of the ordinary for me to say, I love a burrito. I really do. Love burritos. I love Warriors basketball. I love dark artisan chocolate. A good Cabernet Sauvignon. Many things I would say, oh, I love that. You may have some things that you throw around that word around too. But if I use the same word for those things as I do for my love for Jesus, for my wife, my sons, my family, as I do for some delicious carne asada or a Steph Curry jump shot, it tends to lose its meaning after a while. No word in English adequately captures the meaning of agape. The Greeks wisely, whether you are new to the church or have heard some version of this many times, the Greeks wisely had distinct words for love, including philia, more of the brotherly love, not in the sibling sense, but just the greater good for one over another. Eros, the erotic or romantic feelings, and storge, fondness through familiarity. Regarding agape, C.S. Lewis, and if you'd like to dive a little deeper into this, you can read C.S. Lewis's The Four Loves. Lewis says about agape, love is not affectionate feeling, but a steady wish for the loved person's ultimate good as far as it can be obtained. Though we may say agape is not a feeling and cannot be purchased, churches and clergy like me tend to be part of the problem. It's been that way for many centuries and will continue to be as long as there are clergy. In 1517, Martin Luther, not king, but the German reformer, Martin Luther boiled over with frustration of the church of selling indulgences, the practice of clergy telling people that their sins were pardoned if only they gave enough to help build the sanctuary, to help the needs of the church, of selling these indulgences. When Luther posted his 95 Theses on the door of a church in Wittenberg, he was done with this. He would accept it no more. He wanted to put faith and the Bible and a relationship with God in the pews, with the people, and in the streets. But long before and long after Luther and the Reformers, church leaders like me have explicitly and implicitly condoned all sorts of behaviors that were sinful. See, I'll be the first to tell you that it would be much easier to raise the $250,000 plus, and this is true, that we need to make our budget this year if I could tell you that if you gave 10% or 5% or 3% of your income or certain amount, that you would get access to God's VIP suite. Just pony up the right amount or buy this towel in which I wiped my brow and you will be blessed. It would be much easier, and see Robin, our development director, after I apologize to her in advance for looking at this passage, it would be much easier if we could just tell you, give X and your ticket will be punched. I believe that giving is a spiritual discipline, that God is pleased by our giving, that we give in gratitude for our Creator's gifts, but salvation comes by grace and through Christ, not the amount we give. We tend to approach our transformational deity with a transactional mentality. Do we have a God of transformation, or do we have a God of transaction? Jesus did not come to be part of an earthly transaction. He came to bring transformation, and it's about much more than his death on the cross. God is not a banker looking to sell your spiritual mortgage to a third party. God's agape is not a feeling and cannot be purchased. As Reverend Joanne Lee reminded us last week, Dr. Martin Luther King further expanded upon true Christ-like love. Agape is not a weak, passive love. It is love in action. This is why I believe that agape can make America great. But agape is not about America first. King was not talking about weakness. He was talking about the strength he observed through looking at Gandhi's nonviolent resistance in creating the beloved community. King lived and preached agape, the strength of Jesus Christ crucified on a cross at Calvary. Not the fortress of a church located in Pacific Heights, but the hill outside of Jerusalem where criminals who wronged the empire were sent as a message to humiliate them and intimidate others. On Calvary, Jesus was actively inviting those on crosses near him to follow him, and he was forgiving those who had put him on that cross. Father, forgive them, he said in Luke 23, for they do not know what they are doing. But even as he said these words, they drew lots for his clothes. They were entering into transactions while transformation was happening before their very eyes. Dr. King goes on to explain, agape does not begin by discriminating between worthy and unworthy people. It does not begin by discriminating between worthy and unworthy people. It begins by loving others for their sakes. There was a man named Dave who lived mostly for himself, a real live person named Dave. Not surprisingly, lived mostly for himself, as most of us do at different times. He had been through many different relationships and, in his own words, had not exactly lived a life of agape. And he went on living. One day in 2009, a normally cautious mail carrier and grandmother named Shirley took a dream adventure. She was a very cautious person. She lived more of a life of agape, and her son convinced her to go skydiving for the very first time. As Shirley came out of the plane in tandem at 13,000 feet, her instructor and tandem partner quickly came to a terrifying realization. The primary parachute had failed. Shirley's instructor was Dave, the selfish one. Dave knew that he had to cut away the main chute and deploy the reserve, but in the initial impact, the handle from the reserve had gone flying. There was no handle for him to do this. The canopy malfunction had done too much damage. Rapidly spinning and falling, Dave pulled the final reserve chute, which slowed the fall from 100 miles per hour to 60 miles per hour. Still, falling, spinning. As they dropped to 750 feet, Shirley was resolved that this was her last day on Earth, and she even says that in those seconds that felt like hours, that she was okay with that. But at 750 feet, Dave made a decision. He yelled, "Shirley, pull your legs up. Pull your legs up." And he then yanked on the canopy lines as hard as he could, kicked up his own legs, and became a human shield barrier for Shirley. Dave the selfish became Dave of agape. Shirley survived the fall. The impact could be heard from a quarter mile away. Shirley survived the fall. She says when she came to, she could see sky and clouds, and she could feel Dave beneath her. Shirley did survive and was taken to the hospital. But word came to Shirley's husband and family that Dave had passed. Wanting to protect his severely injured wife, her husband insisted that Shirley not be told. But as it turned out, the initial word was wrong. Dave, the selfish 44-year-old who had lived mostly for himself, had survived. He was paralyzed, likely permanently, but he survived. Shirley was out of the hospital and, in her words, good as new within 2 weeks. When Shirley came to visit him, Dave wept. Dave wept not because of his condition, but he wept because of what Shirley had had to endure. He was in much worse shape, but he wept tears for her. Shirley looked at him and said, "I love you. I love you." They had only known each other for 30 minutes. "I love you too," mouthed Dave. Agape never fails. Amen.